Hi everyone, Ginger here, founder and director of Otauna. I'm coming to you today to talk about how to set up the structure for a 6-point mandala, which we have here as an example. So I'm going to talk you through using some cardstock, just the first couple of steps, and then you can practice this setup because it is a little more challenging than setting up some other types of structures for mandalas. So I'm going to leave this one here so you can see it and have another piece of cardstock here showing my example. So for this I'm using our set of 7 tools. You can do it with our set of 8 tools. It would be exactly the same process, it's just you're going to have a smaller version. So I am using our larger tools to demonstrate. So I'm going to use tool 5 and bright red paint, and there's just anywhere on my cardstock where I have left some space, I'm going to put a dot as my center of the mandala. So it is that dot right there. Okay, so that's our center of our mandala. And now we're going to see how do we set up the 6-point structure. So for that, in this particular set of instructions, you would need tool 7. Even if the combinations of sizes for the center and the next step are different than the sizes I'm using for this piece, this process I'm going to show you right now is the same. So in here we have 6 bright red dots. So once you do that step, you have set yourself up to paint a 6-point structure. So even as it gets further out here, there are 6 of those blue dots. Right in here in the yellow and orange area, there's 6 of those. You might be thinking, well, Ginger, there are 12 of these green. They act together as one unit, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's still 6 sections of the piece at that spot. So here's how you set it up. We've got tool 7. We're going to use bright red paint. The first part is just like other structures that you've probably been testing out and trying. If you've started with the 8-point structure, this will look familiar because it's the first step in that process. So what you do is you take and you paint a dot right above your center and right below your center. So those 2 dots almost touch the middle. And if they touch, that's no big deal. But the point is we want them to be at the 12 o'clock position and the 6 o'clock position. So far so good. Now here comes the tricky part with a 6-point structure. What we're going to do is turn our piece. I'll just kind of orientate things here a little bit so that these first 2 are off to the side. Now essentially that's making one line through here. And what we need to do is do one going that way and one going that way, and we want it to be evenly spaced. That's the tricky part, getting them evenly spaced. So I'm actually going to show this probably a couple of times. So I'm going to estimate that from this distance to this distance, that this is dividing it approximately into 2 sections. So we're going to end up with a dot here and a little later one here. So I put a dot estimating here. Now I'm going to turn my piece so that this is now at the 12 o'clock position. So I want to be focused on that being the beginning of this line. And then I reapply that paint to my tool and I go down below and I make the dot at the 6 o'clock position. So I've now got my second of 3 lines. So now we see how I made out. That's the tricky part, what we just did. That estimation of where to place that dot. So here is my center again, and I'm going to place a dot right here. And then I want to go down and place another one here. This will make my 6 points. So depending on how I made out, how my estimation skills were, the spaces that I have in here should be equal distance apart. If they're not, don't be surprised, don't be hard on yourself, just keep practicing. What you'll want to practice is that step that we did. I believe it would have been the 3rd step. Let me do it again, and this time I'm going to use the same tool, but I'm going to use a different color. so we know it's my second attempt. So there's tool 5. And I'll use the bright red again for the 6 dots. So here was the process again, top and bottom. So that part we're accustomed to, we can get that. It's when we turn it here and we do the estimation that things can be, well, a little challenging. So you can even test this out with different combinations of tools, because it won't feel the same, the spacing won't be exactly the same if you're using a different combination of tools. The spacing here will be a little bit bigger or smaller. So that's pretty good. I did a little bit better on my second attempt, which is no surprise, you likely will too, than my first. You can see here this space is a little smaller than here. So that's, you know, to be expected. So just keep practicing just that much on a piece of cardstock until you get it. So let me do one more step on this piece. It uses, I'm going to go to this one because it uses the same colors as my original, and use tool 6 and orange paint. Now I can start to correct as I build out any of these little inconsistencies. If I decide I'm just going to keep working with that anyhow, by aligning with the center I can start to pull things back in alignment. So if it's just a little bit off, you can keep on painting and it will be okay. So you can see here with a 6 point, you're just going to end up making 6 dots in each section. They're really great for working on little pieces because you've eliminated 2 sections from an 8-point mandala. That means you've got more space. So tiny pieces are really, really fun to do with this particular structure of a mandala. Okay, so that's how you do it. I would recommend that you, again, try it a few times on cardstock, try it with different combinations of tools, and just keep practicing until you get it. You can do it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining me.